Hi, this is Marlene Gibb with What Do You Do? And today's guest on our new set, by the way, I'm very appreciative to KJM for giving me this new set, is Cheryl Myers. And Cheryl, what do you do?
I am a health coach and I am a toxin expert.
Okay. Health coach has a variety of meanings, so tell me what kind of...
I call myself Cheryl M. Health Muse because I want to inspire you to clean up your life and to live cleaner so that you can live healthy. And that means I can help you work out all of the confusion about what should you be eating, because there's a lot of confusion about food. You should be eating fat, you shouldn't be eating fat. You should be drinking coffee, you shouldn't be drinking coffee. I can help you navigate through all of that. But I got autoimmune disease 7 years ago I was told that it was in my head by my doctor.
Oh, yeah.
And so I dug in and researched on my own, and the net result was I wanted to help other people with everything I learned, which was there are toxins in all areas of our life. And I believe we are not really having a healthcare issue, we're having a toxin issue, because the toxins are giving us all of our chronic diseases. So I went back to school to become a health coach so that I can start to help everyone else discover where the toxins are and what the benefits are of cleaning them up so that they can live long and live happy and healthy.
Wait, when you going back to school, you went to the
I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition.
That was relatively new, wasn't it?
I graduated 2 years ago, so
Okay.
I'm new doing this.
And how long did it take you to get through the school?
It only took a year, but I did research for 5 years before I went back to school.
Which brings me to the book. And this
Right.
is her book. And I've been reading it, and it is excellent.
Thank
It is
you.
such an excellent book. It's a good reference book. And if I don't know anything, I go to all your chapters. I think you have 27 chapters on
Right.
toxins.
And it's organized so you can read any chapter at any time.
Exactly. But I did. We'll talk about the cosmetics. I read that whole chapter because I was interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start at the beginning, and let's start with the autoimmune.
Right.
That's chapter 1.
I woke up one morning 7 years ago and every muscle and every joint in my body hurt. I couldn't even get out of bed. I had brain fog. I had chronic fatigue. I was more tired when I woke up than I was when I went to bed. And so I went to the doctor. She ran a bunch of tests, and then she said,
There's nothing wrong.
nothing wrong. So she ran a bunch more tests and said, there's nothing wrong. And finally she called me and said, I'm going to give you steroids, but I don't think there's anything wrong with you, and I think you should seek therapy. I went, I got news for you. I hurt. So something is wrong with me, and I'm not going to have a life of pills and pain, especially since you don't know what you're giving me the pills for.
Exactly.
So I have a jewelry business here in Monrovia. I turned it over to my staff, and I started researching. And I tripped into something called the functional medical community. Didn't know what I was looking at, and so I just started listening what seemed to be pertinent. And they ran 19 different symposiums that year on different parts of the body.
Really?
And I listened to multiple doctors talk about all 19 areas. One was on the thyroid, one was on Alzheimer's, one was on IBS, one was on the adrenals. They just covered everything, and I watched them all. And I figured out from listening to all of this that I probably needed a functional doctor, which I did end up getting. But I also figured out I probably had autoimmune disease. And there were 2 things I could do right away for myself that would help me with the pain. One was to eliminate my stress. I always knew I had a lot of stress, but I thought it was good to be chased by a tiger 24/7. Ends up it's not a good thing.
Terrible.
Stress accumulates. And then the other one was I could start to research and eliminate toxins. So I started looking into it. And there's an excellent database called EWG.org, which is the Environmental Working Group. And they have hundreds of thousands of items that they have rated from 1 to 10 on toxicity. Not particularly a user-friendly database.
Okay.
But you can go in, and a lot of times your product will be listed, and if it's not, you can look them up by ingredients. So I dug in. And I started
Okay, when you
looking
say
things up.
your product, like if I'm looking at the back of a bottle of ketchup,
Right.
okay, let's start with ketchup. They're supposedly, it's listed in five, verse 5. They put on the ingredients.
Well, all the
and
ingredients are
it's-
listed.
Yeah, all the ingredients are listed, but it's in the order of
The order of the largest quantity.
the largest
So
quantity.
if sugar is first, then there's more sugar in that than anything else.
and then it goes down.
And then it goes down,
yeah.
decreases as you go.
And then all the other things that you can't understand.
Well, I have a theory about those now. If
Yeah.
you can't pronounce it
That's
or you don't know what it is,
exactly.
you don't buy it. Period. You read labels on everything before you buy them. The ones that you don't know what they are and that you can't pronounce are synthetic ingredients that have absolutely no food value.
So why are they in there?
Because the food industry is making things that taste good, but they don't have anything to do with food. The more I dug into toxins, I was appalled because literally, if we're buying a lot of over-the-counter products at the grocery store, you're getting all kinds of toxins, you're getting all kinds of non-food, and you need to know what you're eating. And so learning what's in your products is important. But to start with the EWG database, first you would look up Heinz ketchup.
Right.
And you would see what it was rated. It'll be rated from 1 to 10. And if it's not in there, then you can start to look up all those bizarre ingredients that aren't good for you and find out what they do to you. So it's all there. You can access it. It just is very time consuming. But that's where I started. I started looking up everything I used in my life. And I started eliminating the things that were causing my body harm.
Right.
And then I started digging to find things that I liked to replace it. And it took me 5 years, but I went through all my food, all my cosmetics, all the things I cooked my food with and on, how I stored my food, my water, and what I drank my water from. I now drink only from stainless steel. I went through everything. And at the same time, I learned stress exercises to keep my stress low. I learned how to get a full 7 hours of sleep, which is critical. That last hour cleans all the plaque out of your brain so you don't get Alzheimer's. I learned how to reduce my anxiety. I had a serious case of worry, which I actually kind of inherited from my mother, but I don't worry very much anymore. I dealt with toxic lack of movement. I never liked to exercise, so I found things that I enjoy to do, which are yoga, and I bought what I call my mini trampoline, but it's a rebounder. And I jumped to country western music 4 times a week. And then the last thing was toxic relationships. I was actually in one when I got sick. I woke up one morning and he looked at me and said, "I don't like it that you're sick." We'd been together 10 years, and I looked at him and said, "What would you like me to do about that?" And so we broke up, but that ended up being an angel's hand on my back because I ended up finding a fantastic man who wanted to go on a get well journey with me. Had I stayed in the toxic relationship, I might not have gotten well, but the man that joined me in my get well journey, I married him 4 years ago, and he is a tremendous support for everything that I'm doing now, so it worked out well.
So everything with toxins, because toxins set off things in the system, whether it's psychological, physical, mental. I mean, that's what you're saying. We're not going to get away from
all those toxins do harm to your gut.
Right. Exactly.
The second thing I learned from watching all those symposiums was I probably had autoimmune disease, and they kept talking about leaky gut.
Yeah.
So I went, what the heck is leaky gut? And I started researching it. And toxins are one of the things that cause leaky gut. Stress also causes leaky gut. Sugar causes leaky gut. So all of the things that created leaky gut were things that I set out to eliminate from my life. So let me tell you quickly what leaky gut is.
Yeah. And brain fog.
And brain fog. The brain fog also comes from leaky gut. So you eat food and it goes into your tummy and you digest it.
Right.
But if you have all these toxins in your stomach and you're not digesting them down to the right size particle, or you have a lot of stress so you're not digesting them down to the right size particle, what happens is the lining of your gut is only 1 cell thick. And those particles, they want to get out. So they start pushing up against the lining of your gut. And eventually they'll make a little rip. And then they make a bigger rip. And this lining, that's only 1 cell thick, it actually replenishes itself every 7 days. But it can't keep up eventually. If you're eating a lot of toxins and you have a lot of stress, you're getting more and more the wrong size particles in your gut. So then they start to slip into your blood. And your immune system does exactly what it's meant to do. It screams attack because it's a foreigner that has entered the blood system. It might be food, and had it gotten down to the right size, your immune system wouldn't have screamed attack, but all of these little things are now in your blood screaming attack. And then your body does something really interesting. Those mimic different parts of the body for each of us. So for one person, it might mimic your thyroid, and you might get Hashimoto's or Graves' disease. Right. For somebody else, it might mimic your skin, and you might get psoriasis or eczema. For somebody else, it might mimic brain cells, and then you get Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Somebody else, it might be IBS in your lower intestine. But wherever it is, your immune system not only attacks this foreign particle in your blood, but starts to attack the tissue that it's mimicking, which varies in each of us. In my case, it was my joints and my muscles. And brain fog is part of all of it. If you're not eating properly, then that's the impact on your brain cells. And
yeah, you can get. I mean, if I don't eat every couple hours, I can get real fuzzy.
Right, and and the best thing for that is eating lots of vegetables, all the colors of the rainbow from a farm as close to you as possible, because that'll even take care of depression. Believe it or not, really? Depression often starts in the gut. They've recently made the discovery that they thought most of your serotonin came from your brain, which is the feel-good hormone, but it's actually made mostly in your gut.
Oh, the gut does much more than I think.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's gut is different.
Everybody's gut is different. And it's not just the toxins and the stress, it's also parasites or candida or antibiotics and over-the-counter medication. All kinds of things interrupt your gut from doing what it's supposed to do. But you really need a healthy gut loaded with really healthy, good bacteria if you want to live a healthy life. So getting all of that taken care of, healing up your leaky gut is all part of your return to health. And here I am 7 years later, and I will always have autoimmune disease, but I don't have pain. And that's huge.
Now, your joints, did that have anything to do with arthritis? Is arthritis?
Probably. It was probably the same thing that causes arthritis.
Yeah.
I caught it early. I was lucky because I reacted to it right away. I wasn't going to lay in bed, and I certainly wasn't going to start taking pills if I could find another way. And so, yeah, there are 140 different autoimmune diseases that are named. What I got wasn't named. I have undefined autoimmune disease, because I think I hadn't progressed to it specializing yet in my body.
When you went and found a doctor, you eventually found
a functional doctor.
What kind of tests did they do versus the
night and day? Let me first explain what the difference is between a conventional doctor and a functional doctor.
I think that's very important. But
my functional doctor graduated from Yale as an MD, full MD. She went back to school because she got sick and couldn't help herself. And I have discovered, as I've been on this journey, that's true of most people who practice functional medicine. They go get additional training at the Institute for Functional Medicine. And the big difference is a conventional doctor, usually your appointment is somewhere between 6 and 8 minutes. Mm-hmm. And they hear the first symptom, and then they match the pill to the symptom, and you're on your way. I used to leave my doctor and go, wait, I didn't tell her this, I didn't tell her this. That's because she heard the first symptom and matched the pill, and I was gone. A functional doctor is a root cause doctor. They don't look for one symptom. They want to know how the whole body is creating whatever's going on in your body together. So when I got to my functional doctor, the first thing she said to me is, Cheryl, you're sitting on a tack. let's go find that tack. So the tests that she ran were completely different from what my conventional doctor had run. My conventional doctor ran a test on my thyroid. She ran the test from here to here. My functional doctor ran that test, but she also ran what happened to my thyroid from here to my adrenals. That's where I was broken. And so they run different tests because they want to understand how the whole body is operating together. And I have diabetes. Knowing how my and I'm having a problem with mold in my body at the moment. Yeah. And it's really impacting my blood sugar because the mold is in my liver and it's in my cells, and it is impacting how my cells are accepting insulin. So a conventional doctor probably wouldn't go there and even think about that. But a functional doctor, because she's looking at the whole thing.
Yeah, they look at the big
They
picture.
want to fix the whole body. They don't want to just fix your liver or fix your adrenals or fix your diabetes. They want to find out what's causing the problem and get you to maximum health. So another example, conventional doctor.
Wait a second.
Okay.
With the conventional versus the functional, the functional takes acupuncturists. Acupuncturists are in there. Chiropractors are in there. Nutritionists.
Yes and no. They could be in a functional doctor's office because she believes in it.
Yeah.
She can do medication. She has the ability as a doctor to give you pharmaceuticals, but that's probably not her first choice.
Right, exactly.
My doctor has electromagnetic therapy in her office, where I thought it was really weird, but I would lay down on a pad and they would put nodes all over me, and I'd go to sleep for an hour and I'd wake up and I would have less pain. And that is one of the alternative therapies that my doctor believes in that she offered. There's also something called integrative medicine, which is similar to functional medicine in that they look at the whole body, but they actually do include acupressure and acupuncture and herbal. All of that is part of an integrative practice. My doctor also uses some of those methods.
Okay.
So they're similar but slightly different, and they've gone through different schools.
All right. So does it make any difference? I mean, if
you're going to go to an integrative doctor, my recommendation is you ask, do they do root cause medicine? Because there are some integrative doctors that do not. So if they do root cause medicine, then they're going to look at the whole body. So that's the key. Many of them do.
Okay. Okay. So if you're on this, you're running around looking for a doctor, right? Because you don't know where you're going. And you go to various ones. How do you pick between functional and integrative? Maybe you like one better than the other?
Well, I started at ifm.org actually lists all of the functional doctors in your area. You can put in your zip code and they bring up a whole list.
Okay.
They're not all medical doctors. Some of them are naturopaths.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, there's different, and so there are different practices involved with it. All of them have been trained in root cause medicine. So all of them are good at getting down to the core issue of what's wrong with you. So that's where I started, and I wanted a medical doctor because I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I was pretty sure it was autoimmune, so I decided I needed an MD. The next issue with finding a functional doctor is most of them do not take insurance.
Yeah.
So I literally got on the phone and I called every single functional doctor and integrative doctor in the Los Angeles area, and I asked to speak to the office manager, and I asked about insurance. And I found one that does take, and I was just 6 months away from Medicare, so I asked, did they take Medicare? And then I waited until they did, and that's when I went to my doctor, because I wanted it to be covered, and everything I do through my doctor is covered by my Medicare and my second plan, my alternative plan, which I do with AARP. But you need to know that because it can be expensive to go to a functional doctor. The other thing that I have found when I made all those phone calls is some of them did not take insurance, but they practiced something called concierge medicine, which means maybe you would pay $350 a year, and then you would pay co-pays every time you went in to see your doctor. So instead of going through insurance, which is a big pain in the wazoo for them to deal with, you sort of were buying an insurance plan with them so that you could get what you needed. And you were where you would pay your co-pays to the insurance company. With a conventional doctor, you're paying co-pays with the functional doctor. So don't close it off because they don't take insurance. Ask more questions about how their patients do it.
Now, are there a lot of concierge doctors?
I found a couple. There's one in Orange County here. I didn't find one close to me.
Right.
And I actually traveled to Studio City to see my doctor, and
Yeah,
she's worth it.
I remember you telling me.
Yeah.
No, I think that people, where do you see this going while we're on this topic? Because I think this medicine's got to change. I don't know, but I don't know if medicine's going to change because of the pharmaceuticals and this and that.
It's a problem because there is no money in treating somebody holistically. There is some money in it, but the pharmaceutical companies aren't going to let it go there.
No, that's
and
right.
a couple of things I learned about conventional medicine, and I'm not saying we don't need them, and I'm not saying you don't need to go to one, but a conventional doctor gets most of their information from their pharmaceutical rep. That's the first thing you need to know. That's the person who's keeping them abreast of the newest things in medicine. And the second thing, I had no idea medical schools were started at the beginning of the last century by pharmaceutical companies.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Rockefeller was a pharmaceutical company maven, and he started some of the big major medical schools on the East Coast. So they were always geared towards what medicine would help you with whatever your ailment was. And the beauty of a functional doctor is that is not their focus.
Right, exactly.
And so I am on a couple pharmaceuticals from my doctor. I am on a couple of compounded medicines that are done at a pharmaceutical compounding lab in Glendale. And they're kind of out of the 9 dots. Nobody is making these so that you can buy them from the pharmaceutical company, but one is the last thing that removed all my pain. It's an amazing thing, and it has no downside. So not only do you have to know what pill you're taking, but what's that pill doing to you? And this has been researched. It actually is being used for people with fibromyalgia because that's similar to what I have. And it removes the pain, but it was something that was developed for people with alcoholism problems. So I can't drink. I don't care. I won't drink. I'll settle for not having any pain. It's worth it.
Wow.
And the thyroid that she put me on is a wild yam compounded pill. So it's natural, but it's compounded in a compounding pharmacy. Very different from the synthetic thyroids that my conventional doctor would have put me on. So, while I'm talking about all this, understand I'm not a doctor, but what I really want you all to do is I want you to own your own health. Don't just accept things from anybody. Research it. And then go back in the next time and have a real conversation about what are the downsides that you read about. What do you do about them? What is the best way for you to get off the pills? You don't want to be on pills for the rest of your life. Own your own health and be an important partner in the conversation. When I go to my functional doctor, I've done research, she's done research. She spends 45 minutes with me. That's unheard of in conventional medicine.
Right.
And when I leave, we both have a plan on how I'm going to get to the next level of getting well. And I joke with her that I'm an onion. We keep peeling away layers and finding things underneath that we can fix. And together we are fixing them one by one. So it's really been, if I was young, I'd go back and I would become
a doctor
or something that had to do with all of this.
But you're working with people.
I am working with people. What I did do after I learned all this.
This book, I mean, I can't say enough good things about this book.
Thank you.
Because it's.
Well, I knew.
I mean, it's easy. You're not all over the place. You're very organized, and you've got all these everything indexed and where
Right,
you
and there's
found it.
tremendous resources in the back of this book.
A lot.
When I started feeling good, I decided, I was 67, I decided I was going to go back to school, because if I didn't know it, then most likely a lot of other people didn't know it. So this, I wanted to write the manual that I couldn't find when I got sick. But I decided in order to do that, to get, my BA is from Berkeley, but it's in English.
Right.
And so I wanted to get some credibility to do what I wanted to do. So I went back. It's an online class. I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. It's a year course, and I graduated from their school, and then they offered a do you want to write a book class. And while I was researching, I had set up file folders on my computer, and every single thing I learned was organized in a file folder. If I was learning about my thyroid, it was organized in a file folder. If I was learning about GMOs and organic versus conventional food growing, it was organized in folders. And so they said, do you want to write a book? I said, I got a book that's ready to write. So I sat down in November, and I was ready with the book by January. It took me 3 months, and I sometimes joke that I think I channeled it. It just wrote itself. I made a list of what the subjects were that I wanted to cover. The hardest chapter for me to write was the one on conventional versus genetically modified versus organic.
Explain. Yeah, you can explain that to me.
In California we had the thing on the ballot about GMOs, and there was so much misinformation thrown around. I'm not surprised it did not win, because a lot of what they said about GMOs wasn't true. It wasn't really even what GMOs are. So let me tell you what GMOs are. We'll start there. Real GMOs, the things that are in your store, are one of two things. They are either crops that have had Bt toxins spliced right into the plant as it's growing.
Is this the big lawsuit with?
No, that's the second kind.
Oh, okay.
Bt toxin is a really nasty toxin, and what happens when it grows up in the plant is when the bug eats it, it blows up his stomach, so he doesn't eat the plant. Sounds like a good thing, right? Well, it's blowing up our bees and our butterflies. So if we don't have pollinators, we're not going to have crops pretty soon. But even worse than that, when Bt toxin gets in our gut, remember how important the gut is, it's the gift that keeps on giving. It replicates in our gut.
Fast.
So those toxins are now running all over our body. And it's killing all of our good gut bacteria. All the bugs in our gut are dying because of the Bt toxin. And when you don't have good gut bacteria, you can't stay well. So that's a problem. So that's the first kind of genetically modified.
Okay.
The second kind of genetically modified is just as insidious. Crops are being made Roundup ready.
Roundup.
And this is the one that finally it lost a landmark lawsuit in last fall in San Francisco from a guy who was spraying it in a full suit on a schoolyard and got lymphoma. And Robert Kennedy Jr. took up the lawsuit and actually got Monsanto to cough up all of their discovery that proved that they have known for 25 years that they've been giving us cancer.
But don't we have an FDA that is supposed to regulate this
Well,
stuff?
the problem with the FDA, I got really angry at our government, and I'll tell you what I concluded about that. The guys who run the FDA were either all past executives from Monsanto or future executives at Monsanto. And sometimes they were both. They would go out the door of Monsanto into the FDA and then go back into the door at Monsanto in a higher position. So
Isn't that
yeah, the bottom line is our government's not going to protect us, but I have a plan on what we're going to do about that.
But that's a conflict of interest.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a big conflict of interest.
But it's allowed. So the landmark case was one in San Francisco, and of course they took it back to the court because it's going to ruin their business. And they just got bought by Bayer, which was a perfect storm because Monsanto can make us sick and Bayer can give us the pills to try to cover it up and make us feel good. So they took it to court, and last week they lost that case. So it's now going to hopefully become law. Monsanto lost the case.
Okay.
So this is big. But all of
But
those Roundup Ready crops are part of genetically modified, and your processed food is loaded with genetically modified foods. Loaded.
And a lot of corn is.
All your corn is, all that they're feeding conventional animals, all your beef, all your pork, all your chickens, they're all eating GMO feed. So they're all eating these poisons, and what your animal eats that you're eating is what you are getting in your body. So when I tell you if you're going to eat meat, which I don't have a problem with as your health coach, you need to eat clean meat that eats what they naturally eat. So beef has to be grass-fed, grass-finished. Pork has
What do
to
you mean
be
grass-fed, grass-finished?
that was one of my surprises because I started off with grass-fed and didn't know about the finished.
Okay, I never
Right
heard,
before
I never heard that.
the cow goes to market, if he's been grass-fed, he's out in the field eating what he wants, which is his grass, they fatten him up by giving him GMO corn.
Oh my God.
So it can't just be grass-fed, and if you go to your local jewelry store, your local grocery store, you got to ask, is this grass-fed, grass-finished? Is this 100% organic? Because if it's not, you don't want it. Why are you going to pay more for grass-fed beef if they're going to give you all the toxins in the end anyway?
I have a friend, and he uses someplace locally, and he always gets every couple months a quarter of a beef.
Yep.
Yeah, he's talked to me about that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of little local farmers that
And we have a second home now in Sedona, so we buy a lot of beef in Sedona, and they grow it right along what's called the Verde River. It's cheaper. It's delicious. They're very careful what they feed their cows in the off season, that it's not genetically modified, and you can taste the difference. It's fantastic. So if you can find a local farm that you can get the meat from, I strongly recommend it.
How do people, the average consumer, you've done a lot of research, and I worked in the vitamin industry years ago, and how do they find out about this or know about it? I mean, I don't think.
Well, when I go speak to groups,
Yeah.
I dress up like Wonder Woman. And I joke that maybe, I'm not Wonder Woman, but maybe you'd accept that I'm Wonder Woman's grandmother. But why do I want to be Wonder Woman? Because the two nemesis that she fought was Dr. Poison and the Duke of Deception. You have no idea how much we have been deceived. I have been deceived my entire life about food, about drugs, about everything. And so I want to talk about these deceptions, things that we accept, like milk makes your bones strong. Milk does not make your bones strong.
I don't like milk.
Milk is acidic. It actually is so hard on your kidneys that your body overcompensates and pulls calcium from your bones to protect your kidney when you drink milk. But these are all advertising slogans that I grew up with, and a lot of them are just pure, outright deception. So best way to find out is to start by reading my book.
Yeah,
but if you don't want to read my book, get in and dig in and start to read and start to research. And for any mom who's watching this, 53% of our children have some kind of chronic illness now. I find that appalling. And it's because of all of these toxins. And as a mother, when you are giving birth, your toxic load is passing through the umbilical cord right to the child. So our children today are being born with a heavy toxic load right out of the gate.
Oh, they are.
Which is one reason why 53% of them have chronic illness. And it's happening earlier and earlier. And the other part, that's the sad part, that's the frustrating part. But the good part is, if you clean up, your body wants to heal. So if they start eating organic food and you clean up and don't be feeding them fast food all the time, which has no nutrition in it, and if you clean up the personal care products that they use and how you're cooking your food and the water that they're drinking, the body wants to heal. And so these kids do stand to have a chance, but you got to know about what's going on. And so the book, that's why I wrote the book. I wanted to give you a running start. You may not like the products. I tell you what I found that was toxic and what you can replace it with. And if you don't like my choices, I tell you how to research.
Right, right.
And if you buy my book, I send you a workbook so you can write it all down so that you don't throw anything away. When you run out of the old toxic thing, you have it at your fingertips of what you're going to buy to replace it with. Because I really want everybody to clean up.
But more toxic things, it seems like. When I was talking to you once about milk, and I don't like milk, and I guess you told me almond milk, but almond milk gives me headaches too, and so and people say to me, but it shouldn't. I said, but it does.
Well, it depends upon what almond milk you're buying,
Right.
by the way.
Yeah, exactly. But you said something.
Yeah, there's something called carrageenan in almost everything.
Okay.
That's one of the things you look for when you read labels. Carrageenan is a carcinogen. And carrageenan is put into a lot of milks so that they don't separate. And there are people who react to carrageenan. So you need to look for a carrageenan-free almond milk. But beyond that, the Almond Council 20 years ago made it clear that almonds all had to be pasteurized. And there are different methods of pasteurization. They can be steamed, that's a good way, or they can be sprayed with formaldehyde.
That's not a good one.
And that's not a good one. So
That's terrible.
That
can kill you.
I went, what?
God, that can kill you.
But there are organic almond milks on the market.
Yeah.
So one of them is called Milk, and one is Newborn. So if you're having a problem where you're not feeling so hot when you're drinking your almond milk, that's something that you can buy to hopefully calm that down. And if you shop at a farmer's market, they're not required, because they're a small farmer, to do those horrible things to their almonds.
Really?
So you can buy their almonds and make your own milk. It's not hard to make. It's a little bit messy.
Okay.
You buy a bag that strains it, and you soak them overnight, and you throw them in with filtered water, so you're not using all the toxins that are coming out of your tap, and you put them in your blender. And I have a Vitamix that I use every single day. It has paid for itself 20 times over. And you zip it, and then you strain out the residue of the almonds from the milk, and there's your almond milk.
Talking about products, what do you recommend to have in your kitchen while you're doing all this? I mean, do you have a food processor or a blender?
Well, one of the things that I really want you to do, if you're going to come to me and I'm going to coach you back to health, is I want you to cook.
Okay.
I probably cook 95% of the food that my husband and I eat. And so, yes, I use all kinds of tools. I have a Cuisinart. My Cuisinart actually is an old one. I love it. If it ever dies, I'm going to be sad, because it's much easier to use than the new ones where they don't want you to chop off your fingers. I can just put stuff in.
I like my blender. It's an old blender too. You know.
Yeah. So my Cuisinart. Then I have what I call my mini chop. It's also made by Cuisinart, and I use it to chop up my parsley and my herbs and my garlic and my onion. And I use fresh as much as possible, because onion and garlic are called prebiotics, which you need to feed your probiotics in your gut. So if you eat a lot of raw garlic and onion, they actually go down and they feed your gut bacteria, making them happy. So I use my mini chop, and then I have a Vitamix, which is a super powerful blender that I love to death. And I use it all the time. I use it to make sauces. I use it to make, if you want to make cashew milk, it's really easy. You soak the cashews overnight, you throw them in with your filtered water, and you don't have to strain it. Voila, you have cashew milk. So it's great. But I use it for all kinds of things.
So give me a scenario. A client comes to you, and where do you start?
Actually, I start off with them telling me where they want to start.
Okay.
Because if I don't start off with where they want to start, they're probably not going to stick to it.
Okay.
So I start off by giving them a copy of my book. and I encourage them to read it. But then I talk to them, how many vegetables are they eating a day? Would they be willing to try some vegetables they haven't tried? Would they be willing to try some organic vegetables instead of the ones that they've been eating? Where are they doing their shopping? Would they like me to go grocery shopping with them and show them how I shop the perimeter of the store and not all the crud that's in the middle of the store?
Right.
So it becomes a conversation, and we start with where they want to go and how motivated they are. I try to get them to do enough at the beginning that they can start to feel how much better they feel. Because the faster that they can, I strongly believe now that we don't not in with our body nearly often enough and ask ourselves, how are we feeling? I was getting sick for 20 years and it just flitted past my brain and I didn't pay attention to it. So if I can get people to start to listen to their body, that's huge in terms of their journey back to wellness. So if I can get a client to start feeling good, then it's much easier for them to make changes and to be motivated to make changes. So that's kind of how the process goes. And maybe they don't want to start with food. Maybe they're willing to trade out their cosmetics.
Well, that was, well, I don't eat that badly, but
Right.
yeah.
And the idea is it's all about toxic load. And with me, I had all kinds of signs that my toxic load was building. I reacted to my deodorant, then I reacted to my mascaras, and they either made me blister or they made me rash.
I think it does, we know it on some level.
Yeah.
I really believe we know things on some level, but we don't want to admit it, that
Right.
we know what
Well, I even knew that I should be eating more real food. I had often thought about how good could all this stuff be in frozen food and in the boxes that I was buying. I knew on some level that it was all about eating real food. I just didn't do it. But when it became clear how much better my body felt when I ate real food, then it became a really easy thing to change. And I was motivated. I was sick. But what I'd really like to get people to do is to change before they get sick and tired of being sick and tired. Because if you want to live long and thrive, you need to change now. And if you want to raise healthy children, you need to change now. So this is all really important stuff. But it's about toxic load. And so had I been paying attention to my body and started lowering my toxic load, I probably wouldn't have tipped over the top and gone into illness. But people often will say to me, I don't need to pay attention to you. I feel great. Well, you don't know that you feel great. It takes 20 years for toxic load to build up and go over the top.
I know, I remember when I was telling you about that film I was watching, and they were talking to one woman who was an Ayurveda doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to explain Ayurvedic?
Yeah, Ayurveda is an ancient Indian way of life.
Mm-hmm.
And they think a little differently than Western, but a lot of their principles are very great. And even my functional doctor, I still have a problem with my cortisol. I dip too low and then I get chronic fatigue. And so I'm going through that right now. And what we use for that now is an Ayurvedic. I use Rhodelia, which are drops I put in water. And it's amazing because it will bring my cortisol right back up. And then I'm full of vim and vigor again. So it's an ancient method of treating the body that's very intuitive and very natural.
So there was a lady on, and she had gone through what you've gone through, what I've gone through. And what she did was, when they asked her, where are you going to start? She said, when you were born. I thought that was one of the best answers. And the woman said, why? She says, because antibiotics stay in the system for years and years and years. And I never knew that. I thought they just went through
and my
urine.
joke for years, and it was a joke, was I popped out in Pittsburgh allergic to Pittsburgh. Ends up, I was allergic to Pittsburgh, but I didn't know that. We lived in a town where I literally remember them. We left when I was 4 because my dad got me out of there because he thought I would never be well if I grew up there. But I actually remember them oiling the street to keep the steel and the coal dust down. It was just north of Pittsburgh, and they were all steel mills on the Allegheny River there. And so, literally, I did pop out allergic to Pittsburgh. But the reason was when we dug into my genetics, I inherited from both my parents something called MTHFR, which we discovered because I took the 23andMe test on a lark to find out what my real heritage was. And my doctor went, if you have that data, I want it. And she read it and said, MTHFR. I got it from both my parents. I'm sorry I didn't know this while my parents were alive because I could have helped them. But it means that my body does not detox. So what goes into my body
Stays
in my body. So all those toxic metals back to Ambridge, Pennsylvania, were still in my body. And getting rid of all those toxic metals was my first big victory to get back to health.
See, I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania, and we have the coal mines and the fires underneath to keep in right. And black lung was real serious. I mean, people died from black lung disease in those mines. You know, they caught it year after year. So and it was dirty. Scranton and Pittsburgh are dirty cities.
Yeah, Pittsburgh isn't dirty anymore. I actually went back maybe 10 years ago and I was amazed at how cleaned up it was. I used to get within 50 miles of Pittsburgh and break out an allergy rash from head to toe.
Oh, wow.
I didn't do that this time.
I haven't been back to Scranton, and no, I was there 20 years ago. It's still not a pretty town. You know what
Pittsburgh has tried. I don't know.
Scranton's different. So getting back to that, so the Ayurvedic stuff too is used. Now there are Ayurveda doctors too. Now are some of them functional doctors?
Probably not, but they may use some functional principles. It's possible that somebody would have gone back to get a functional education to improve their Ayurvedic practice. It's possible. I think it's more likely that functional people would use Ayurvedic than reverse.
Okay. So we're going to wrap up. Anything else I was asked a curious question by David, and he says it's about himself, our new executive director, so I'm going to quote you. What is the legacy you would like to leave?
If I can help people change how they eat so that they raise healthy families, that would be a victory. If I can help one person with chronic pain reduce their pain, that would be my legacy. Really, my legacy, I think, is to help people discover what I now know so that they can use it to live healthier and longer lives.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Marlene Gibb with What Do You Do?